The Ontario Healthy Communities Coalition provides consultations, learning activities, and network support to groups that are working on creating healthy communities across the province. And much of our work revolves around rural communities, certainly. And over the last 20 years, we've been working on transportation issues in different capacities. In terms of this particular project, our role has been to organize a series of 3 webinars, which were held in February and March of this year, as well as conduct a scan on rural transportation initiatives that are in existence around the province, and to research, analyze, and publish 10 case studies on initiatives that we sort of see as ones that would be good to highlight, and so I'll be talking about those shortly. By participating in this project, we've been able to help create a lot of learning around rural transportation issues and programs, and we're going to be able to pass this information on to communities, and it'll be really useful, I think, in terms of helping groups that are starting to look at developing initiatives, or even for those who have ones in place that maybe want to make them more sustainable, or learn things from other communities in terms of their successes. We've increased our understanding of the issues facing rural communities, as well as trace the development of committees and partnerships for initiatives in terms of their early stages, understanding the histories of how and why they came to be. And in some cases, there were a couple of failed attempts that happened, and that eventually led to the successes that exist now. We discovered how different circumstances led to different types of initiatives, and they are really quite varied. And we certainly learned about all the different factors that contribute to success or failure. So, sorry, I have slides. Now that you've got me holding the mic, it's kind of confused me. So in terms of the case studies, we are going to be publishing those online, and there'll be copies available in print for people who would like them. And we're hoping these will serve as a model for any new programs that might develop. The first step in developing the case studies was to identify as many rural programs as we could. So we invited people to fill out a survey, and we asked them to pass the invitation to fill out the survey on to other people. So we really relied on word of mouth and putting that survey out to various networks. We had about 35 programs in the end that were listed in this, and they're in the project summary that you've got, the 8-page document. They're on page 3. Whoops. The results from the scan identified that initiatives appeared to be successful and sustainable, and they had to actually meet certain criteria in order to be part of, actually become a case study. Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. I think I missed a slide here. Sorry, there we go. Okay. So when investigating all the different programs that participated in this scan, we were clear about acknowledging that some people are using them formal networks, certainly, and that any of the programs that exist were not meant to necessarily sort of replace those informal networks, and that those sorts of things would continue to exist. But we were really focused on those programs that were also made available because people weren't able to meet their transportation needs through existing resources. So we made an effort to be systematic and consistent about the data that we collected so that the programs could be compared to one another. And so we have some broad headings that we used in each of the case studies. And they're still being put together. We're still compiling those. So I'm really just going to give you a summary today. But in the final document, there we have these headings of community profile, looking at local transportation issues in terms of the context, the background to how the initiative developed, what their current operations are, the impacts that they have been having on people socially, economically, in terms of health. And we wanted to look at environmentally, but it's much more difficult to measure. And then certainly any future considerations or plans that each initiative has down the road. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview now. Oh, sorry, no, actually, in terms of the final report, there are 3 components. As I mentioned, there's the online piece, the electronic document will be available, and that print will be available as well. So there's the interim report that you currently have, that 8-page report that's being distributed at all the forums. And then there will be individual case studies that will be put together for each of the 10 participants for themselves to use, so that they have the opportunity to use that information in order to share information about the work that they're doing, because many of them receive calls or emails on a regular basis asking about their programs, and certainly I know some of those of you who are here could speak to that, and that's it takes a lot of time just to share information with people, so that's one of the other reasons why this project is really going to be useful. And then there will be a full report that'll include all the case studies, as well as an introduction, analysis, and some conclusions. So the first case study is Deseronto Transit, and all of these are outlined again in the summary that you've got on pages 5 to 7. They're in alphabetical order, so they're not in the same order as I'm going. That's just to keep things interesting, so you don't just follow along. You can sort of hop around in the document and listen to me at the same time. So Deseronto Transit is actually in the area around the city of Belleville, so it serves the areas east and south of the city of Belleville. It was established in 2007 and is operated by the town of Deseronto. It's actually guided by a transit board, and there's a full-time administrator that oversees operations, and she is employed by the town. She also will occasionally have to drive the bus if someone is not available. So she's really quite multifaceted, and this is like anything in rural communities, we have to wear a lot of hats. So there are actually 2 community buses, both of which are wheelchair accessible, and there are 2 minivans as well. Deseronto Transit started in response to specifically access to employment, so helping people it was started off helping people with a pilot project that was trying to help people on Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program access employment. And I might not get the figures exactly right, but I think they had a goal initially to provide about access to 70 jobs, and it ended up being about 130 in the short time that they did it. So it was really successful, and there was no question that the town wanted to support it beyond the pilot. They have 2 routes that they run with 4 regularly scheduled services, and they go out early in the morning, about 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning, and come back around 5 at night. And there are later runs available on demand, but it is very much based around employment. However, other people do use the service, certainly, for shopping and other sorts of things. The fares range anywhere from about $6 to $11, depending on where you originate. And it serves Napanee, certainly the town of Deseronto, Picton and Bloomfield in Prince Edward County, as well as Tenandaneega Territory, which is an Aboriginal territory, and Tenandaneega Township. The next one is the Rural Overland Utility Transit, or known as the Trout, and this is in and around the town of Bancroft. It was created in 2010. So this is the 4th year of operation, and it was actually an extension of a handy bus service for seniors that Community Care North Hastings operated. They have a combined fixed route with specialized service, so they sort of continue to provide a little bit of the door-to-door type of thing that they need in order to meet the needs of seniors and people with disabilities. They have 4 community buses that travel out of town, one to each area one day a week. So there are 3 routes out of town. So on Wednesdays they go on this route, on Thursdays they go on this route, and Friday on that. And then every day there is a route within the town of Bancroft itself. They have, all 4 buses are fully wheelchair accessible, and the fares range from $2 to $10 again, depending on origin and destination. The third is the Collingwood-Wasaga Beach and Collingwood-Blue Mountains transit links. So in Collingwood itself, there is Caltrans, which is the transit system for the town, but these are actually the links that go to the towns on either side of Collingwood. Excuse me. The Wasaga Beach Link was actually created in 2011 as a pilot, and it was so successful it's now an integrated component of their public transit system for the 2 municipalities, and it operates 7 days a week. In the town of Blue Mountains, they launched that just this past fall, and the pilot is still running and will run until August of this year. And it was not only a partnership with the municipalities, but also a public-private partnership with the town of Blue Mountains and Blue Mountains Resorts Limited, as well as Blue Mountains Village Association. And so a lot of the transit's purpose is to provide access to work for employees in the Blue Mountains Resort, for instance. People also use it for education, to access education, so for instance, some of the schools, some kids don't necessarily go to the local school, they use it to go to the school that's in Collingwood, and certainly they've had much higher than expected ridership, so it will probably, the Blue Mountains link will probably continue. The fourth one is the Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transit, also known as SMART. And this is an interesting one because it's a registered charity, but it's actually a collaboration between the 8 municipalities within Bruce and Grey counties. And so they've created a nonprofit, what's called a government nonprofit organization, in order to conduct that collaboration. It provides non-emergency medical transportation, as well as access to employment and social activities, and it's specifically for individuals and groups with physical or mental challenges. So in some cases there are specific populations that are served, but there are aspects of the transit system that we wanted to highlight which were interesting and that had a lot of aspects that could be transferable. So this is really interesting given it's got the 8 municipalities that are collaborating. Fares fares are based on a per kilometer basis, so they charge 30 cents a kilometer with a $2 sort of flat rate, and that's within the service areas. And then outside the service areas, it's the kilometer basis, but with an $18 fee, and that's in order to access things like a regional hospital outside the area. Number 5 is Lanark, and this is, if you're not familiar with Lanark County, it's actually southwest of Ottawa. This is a non-profit organization that's been in operation since 2001, and it serves the residents of the County of Lanark and the town of Smiths Falls. And they travel to medical and other sort of specialized appointments and services, but they will provide transportation to things such as daycare as well. So parents who need, or guardians who need to take children to daycare can ride on the bus, drop the kid off, get back on the bus, and then take the bus in, or the van into work. You have to register, and they have about 5,000 riders that are registered with the program, and eligibility is determined whether or not you're affiliated with an organization or an agency, such as Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support, but also if you are unable to access transportation for any other reason. So if there's no taxi service, or you have no friends or relatives who can take you somewhere, then they will come and assist you. So they work on things on a case-by-case basis, but they don't, my understanding is that they won't refuse anyone, and they also work with the people who call in terms of the fares. So they have a sort of suggested fare that they use, but if people can make the case that they can't afford to pay that, then they will subsidize their fare beyond what they already do. They have another, also an interesting structure, because they have a mixture of paid and volunteer drivers. They focus mainly on the paid drivers, and that's really important to them in terms of issues related to risk management, having paid drivers and having them trained a particular way. But they also use 2 volunteer drivers for overflow, just in case there are times when there's an increase in demand or requests that they can't meet, or on weekends and that sort of thing. And so there are volunteer drivers in order to help with that. Okay, we're halfway through. So I just thought it might be good for everyone to do a little stretch in case you're getting a little bit stuck in your seat and move around a little bit. When we did this in Washington on Monday, and someone else, I was sharing with Lorna, our executive director, the presentation. I thought it split it up a little bit, and so you didn't have to listen to they didn't have to listen to the monotony of my voice alone. So the 6th one is actually Northumberland Transportation Initiative, and this is just north of Cobourg, and it's one of 3 integrated transportation components that are run by community care in the area. And it is an on-demand service, but it's available to anybody who resides in the county. So you have to register in advance, but even visitors, people who don't live there, who aren't residents, are able to make use of it. They have 7 vans with paid drivers, and they operate 4 days a week between 8 and 6 p.m. I'm just trying to think if there was something else I wanted to point out about that. They're in a process right now of sort of changing their name and doing some rebranding. So you may find that it's going to have a slightly different name if you go looking for it in the next little while. So number 7 is Ride Norfolk, and Brad Smith, who is the transportation coordinator. Was that the title? Yes, thanks. It's here today, so if you want to hear more about Ride Norfolk, you can certainly talk to him. Brad's also been involved in the management committee for this project and been a great wealth of information. So Ride Norfolk is, for those who aren't familiar with Norfolk County, the towns of Simcoe and Port Dover, and Long Point there on the map you can see is all part of Norfolk County. It was established in 2011 and is operated by the Community Services Department of the county. It's overseen by a transportation committee, and certainly Brad is the coordinator and is employed by the county. And I think, Brad, do you sometimes have to drive the bus?
I'm not allowed to drive the bus.
Okay.
I did 5 feet one time. Kind of
okay, yeah. But he certainly will go out and have to shovel it out of a snowbank and that kind of thing, yeah. So again, multifaceted job description. There is the one bus, and it is fully accessible, and it provides transportation through, it's a contracted service. Can you remind me the name of the? Donnelly Transit is the name of the company that provides the service. It's a fixed route. They have a fixed route, and it runs from 8 to 6, Monday to Friday, and they take a different route each day, and they travel through, a number of towns. I think there are 5 larger towns, and they make several stops within the towns as well as along the route. And the fares range from $2 to $6, right? Easy Ride is the next one, and is Kelly here? No, is someone from Easy Ride here? No, but Jasmine is here from Huron-Perth, so you know a little bit at least about Easy Ride. So Jasmine's there if you want to know a little bit about more about other than what I say, because this is going to be brief. But Easy Ride is a collaborative that's shared by 6 community support agencies in Huron and Perth counties, and it started in 2008 as a result of some funding that was received through the local LIN, the Southwest Local Health Integration Network, as part of their Aging at Home strategy. And they have a fleet of vehicles that the different partner organizations provide, and they have a central dispatch. They have sort of a frequent service that operates, and then they also do the door-to-door, specifically flexible door-to-door service. There is eligibility criteria, and pre-registration is also required. And as far as I know, the focus is on seniors and clients who don't have access to other transportation, as well as those who have physical and cognitive limitations. Ninth is Corridor 11. Now, this is a bus that runs along Highway 11 on that stretch between Huntsville and Barrie. And this is, so the Huntsville in the north and Barrie in the south. And it's operated by Hammond Transportation. It's actually under contract with the district municipality of Muskoka, and there is a quote in somewhere in between pages 5 and 7 from, oh, and it's up here as well, from the Commissioner of Muskoka about how important this transportation is to the region. It's a coordinated option for residents up and down the corridor, and provides, again, certainly access to employment, but also it provides transportation for seniors and others who are doing shopping and other sorts of things. It's operated by Hammond Transport. I think I might have said that already. The fares range anywhere from $4 to $22 depending on how far you're going. And they have somewhere between, I think, 90 and 100 passengers a week. Last but not least, we have Kawartha Lakes Dial-A-Ride. And this is serving the rural areas just north of Lindsay. It connects Lindsay to Dunsford, Bobcaygeon, Fenland Falls, and Cameron, and is operated by Niagara Classic Transport. It's run by the City of Kawartha Lakes, and they have 3 buses that go out. It's interesting because it has scheduled stops and that go in 2 loops. So they have a counterclockwise or clockwise and a counterclockwise loop that they do. And it operates from 7 till 7. The fares are set at $5, and children under 5 ride for free. Each loop takes about 2 hours to run in one direction, and I think they do 7 loops in a day. It's open to the general public, and certainly they will make additional stops along the route for registered customers, and they'll travel about 150 meters off route as well. So there's a really eclectic sort of group of case studies there, and certainly you can learn a whole lot more once we've got the final product produced, and if you have any specific questions, I can try and answer them at this point as well. But in terms of impacts, we've been finding that there are all sorts of social, health, and economic impacts. Endless things such as what Shirley referred to in terms of quotes of people saying how much these services have affected their lives. People regularly write in explaining that, and again, I know that Brad has a number that he can pull out of his back pocket as well in terms of the impact that Ride Norfolk has had. The obvious in terms of meeting and interacting with people and avoiding social isolation is really key. People have the opportunity to engage in local affairs in ways that they may not otherwise. Access to recreation and entertainment of any sort. And again, this sort of spills into the health in terms of physical activity, being able to go to exercise programs or physio, and also just generally accessing medical services, so not just in terms of treatment, but follow-up, which is often a really big deal. Getting back to follow up for something, or if something goes wrong. Being able to not just access groceries generally, but more healthy food, so farmers markets and that sort of thing. Mental health, people talked about a lot in terms of it enriching their lives, having access to transportation. The employment, training, and education piece. I mentioned the daycare, and also, in terms of those of us who have elderly parents or that need to be driven places, that it provides us with the opportunity to stay at work so that we don't have to take time off in order to get them to the appointments that they need to go to. Local purchasing of goods and services is certainly obvious because people will be out shopping. And in some cases, which spills into the environmental, reduced car use. For those people who have households where there's more than one car, people have the option when there's transportation not to use their cars. So in terms of our preliminary findings, we've got a few things that really, again, stood out. It was all about quality of life issues. And there is a quote on page 6 at the bottom about how having access to employment, like you really depend transportation. You depend on available and quality transportation to participate in daily activities and access goods and services generally, and we can't emphasize this piece enough. There's some interesting things in terms of having universal versus specialized services, and just as an example, that it's less stigmatizing if everyone rides the bus. You don't have to feel like you're sort of singled out because you may have a disability or something and you're riding a particular bus. There are different organizational structures, as I mentioned, everything from non-profits that own and operate with municipal partnerships to collaboratives between social and health agencies, those that are municipally owned and operated, and those that are municipally owned with a contracted operator, as well as the collaborative government nonprofit. The gas tax funding has been instrumental to all of the case studies, not only in terms of enabling their development, but also in terms of sustaining them in the long term, being able to even in some cases, a couple of them have created contingency funds so that they can build up money in order to replace vehicles. What isn't clear, it's still unclear exactly, not just for us in analyzing them, but for the groups themselves, just how the gas tax works. Like, we know there are formulas, but just how the allocations are determined, and so there is a desire for greater clarity around that. And certainly those programs that have multiple sources of funding tend to be more sustainable. They have the ability to draw on a diverse sort of pool. Something else that we found was that the programs were limited in their capacity in terms of being able to sort of evaluate their services or necessarily make the case to councils, because some things are very difficult to measure, number one, but also they just don't have the resources or the time, and so and maybe not even necessarily the knowledge. So that's another area I think that some real research could be done in terms of the economic benefits, and not just about that it really is about providing a service that is necessary, and this is not a money-making situation, and Brad will talk a little bit more about that, I think, during the funding panel, certainly. Often there wasn't a lot of information available, so it was really, really important for us to connect directly with the people who run and operate the systems, and their time is limited. And so any assistance, some of them were really happy that we were doing this project in terms of being able to share information, as I mentioned earlier, with other groups, so they don't have to keep repeating themselves, but also in terms of helping to make the case to their own councils. And I think that might be it. I could go on at length, but I think I gotta stop. So I'll open it up to questions, and how much time do I have in terms of questions?
Yeah, we got 5 minutes or so.
Okay, great. So, yes.
You have quite a few examples here, but I'm very interested in knowing, are these self-sufficient economically? Not likely, and if not, what kind of cost is it to the municipalities to have these case studies and transportation operate?
So when you say self-sufficient items, I assume you mean like they run on basis of the fares alone. So there is no transit system, or there's one in the world, I think, that operates on a basis of fares alone. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to undertake this project is to help educate people around the fact that this is something that needs to be supported. So in the same way that we provide, municipalities and the province need to provide support to in order to build roads and for education. This is something that needs to be supported. And so it's sort of a given when you go to Toronto or any of the other major cities in the province or across this country that you have access to public transportation, and it should be the same in our rural areas. I think it was in Walkerton, it was mentioned, yeah, that, you know, one of the ways to look at it is that each time we fill up our cars with gas, and we might be concerned about the amount of money that's going into the gas tax, those are our taxpayers' dollars that are ours, meant to come back to the municipalities in order to provide transportation, and that it is available, that money is available. And so these partnerships between municipalities and any organization that might be taking on, whether it be the municipality itself or any other non-profit organization or even a private operator, needs to have that sort of support. So I know that, I don't know if, yeah. No one's going to say something.
I think that's an excellent question. I think that's one of the reasons that we're here today, is to sort of unpack that. And some of the later presentations will be dealing with that as well. And we have a funding panel discussion as the last element. So I would say keep listening for more information to help you answer your question. The Ministry of Transportation will be joining us by phone to talk about the provincial gas tax piece. So one of the other realities that we've discovered, you know, through this exploration is that the LINs operate differently in different parts of the province. Some of them play a supportive role in contributing to a transportation solution, and in other places they don't see that as their role at all. So depending where you are, the sources of funding and how that matches up against municipal dollars is different. So there is no recipe that you can follow that's going to be standard for every jurisdiction. You need to really find the partners locally that can each contribute and to make up, you know, a service that makes sense and that's affordable for the local tax base as well as. But one of the things that 2 cents, the provincial gas tax is 2 cents for every liter. Right, so rural people are putting that in their gas tank every time they pay, and not very much of it is coming back to rural places. All it takes is a consistent municipal contribution, and it can be a small one, but a consistent one, and that triggers that whole formula. Right, so there's a small amount of consistent support. You can bring a lot of dollars into the community, and so some of the case studies, once they're published, will illustrate that a bit better. And I think Dennis, who's here, will speak a little bit to that as well. The chapter in the Dillon report talks at length about, you know, what the provincial gas tax formula is and how municipalities can support a local transportation solution. So I hope you hear more to help you answer your question today.
Thanks, Ron. Yes.
Maybe it's covered later on, but I'm wondering if anybody has ventured to do a cost analysis of transportation, not in terms of the feasibility of it, but in terms of the impact by offering transportation and its impact on social services or aging at home, or, I mean, there's, you know, it's multifaceted, and I imagine it's a huge amount of money, which would be a nice tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't know, we don't know of anyone, I think, that has done that, and this is exactly the type of thing we're at this point in time where this is the sort of work that needs to happen. There have been some studies out of the US around the economic benefits are beyond the direct provision, but yeah, this is something that needs to happen. So for any funders out there of research, or any researchers, so thanks.
I think it's something that we should be engaging the universities in being a partner, because they certainly can access funding, and it's a huge issue.
Yeah, and we did, Monessen was engaged initially. They've done a bit of work on this, and so, yeah, you're totally right that there is that opportunity there to go further. Yeah.
Let's see if... Eric, do you want to stand up there for a second? Eric Marr's now with the Ministry of Ag, Food and Rural Affairs, but he did his thesis at the University of Guelph on rural transportation. So in your lit review, did you find any impact studies there?
That was a few years ago. And, I mean, there's been tons of work done. It's just a lot of it's not in Canada, a lot of it's international. And whether or not it's comparable, and some of it's a little bit dated, we need a lot more focused research, I think, and especially if it's very community specific. So, you know, engage universities for sure, but some of it would just have to be done by the municipalities themselves.
So if I could just add, if somebody could create a model so municipalities could fill in the blanks, that would be incredibly helpful so that, again, we had a tool and we didn't have to keep reinventing the wheel.
Right. Thank you. That's a good point. So, yeah, at the back there?
Just wondering, how it is that you access the government organizations? Because it's not just in this general area, like it seems with far reaching. We're actually, for example, a nonprofit in our region that
Right.
volunteer drivers, and so we knew nothing about this. So I'm just kind of curious, is there somewhere you can plug into to make sure that we are connected?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one of the things that has happened is people have been connecting informally. So those who've started doing some work heard about this. And back in November, we had a bit of a summit in Bancroft that sort of came about that the Trout hosted. And so those of us who are working on transportation initiatives went out there. But one of the things we want to do as part of this project is create some kind of network. And so I think that's in the evaluation. Yes, thank you. A question about whether or not you'd like to be part of a network and what that might look like. So we're collecting emails for that. And do I just have one question left?
Yeah, I just want to...
Sorry.
Yeah, so while you're waiting for the formal network, subscribe to ROI. We also have Arlene, if you want to give the hashtag for the
It was there, sorry.
moving rural or something.
It's at the...
Moving rural.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of every page on the summary.
So you can connect now, I guess is what I'm saying.
And then, yeah, actually my last slide just shows, also if you want to connect with the OHCC with us about the case studies in particular, and there is a page on our website that's going to continue to provide updates. And there's information there also about the webinars that we held, if you wanted to have access to the recordings and slides, if you wanted to listen to those and take a look. So sorry, but there was another question here, yes?
Have you had an opportunity to review the cost of each one of the case studies? Which is the most efficient to...
Oh, so...
Have you looked at each one individually and compared what the cost would be per kilometer?
Yeah, so because they're so very different in terms of how they operate, that we haven't done that, and so and it's sort of so there was a second part to your original question too, which is in terms of sustainability. So the groups and the communities really range from those that are, I guess, sustaining themselves with their current funding, and those that and depending on the year too and circumstances, may have actually lost a little bit of money. So we're not doing that kind of cross analysis.
But
Yeah.
if you're making to the other point, or question,
Yes.
if you're making an effective model, could you not review the cost of each one to operate based on the number of people that use it and the number of kilometers that they ride, independent of whether whether they make money or not? Could you not determine which would be the most cost effective for your model based on all these case studies that you looked at?
Yeah, I don't know that we could create any one model. I mean, I guess that we're certainly open to hearing a little bit about what's this sort of thing that you'd like to hear in terms of the analysis. They're all so different, and there is no one cookie cutter example that can be provided. Like as Chris mentioned in his opening remarks, right? Some of the areas are just so different about whether or not they're close to an urban area, or there's one that's an hour and a half drive away, and so what the purpose of the transportation is and where they're trying to go. I'm not so sure that we could do that. I mean, maybe I'm missing part of your question, but I think that there are learnings from each of them, and so we could maybe put together all sorts of models. Again, some of the information is changing, and they are, as I said, like, I'll just give you one example that happened, I think it was in Lanark, where they were receiving a certain amount of money through the Best Start program, the provincial Best Start program, and then when all-day kindergarten came into play, I think they were receiving about $65,000 it was a year. It really altered things significantly in terms of structures, and the school board started providing transportation in a way that they didn't before, and so now their funding is more about it was more like $5,000 a year. And so I know you're talking specifically about a per kilometer basis, which is a different thing. I'm just trying to show like that economically there are all sorts of shifts, and so what they charge per kilometer varies because of things like that. That sort of changes, those sorts of changes in funding structures, and some of them are fully universal and open to everyone, and others do the door-to-door service. There are those who have fixed stops. So anyway, it's an interesting thing to think about. I hadn't really considered in that respect. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that. Brad, yeah.
The Canadian Urban Transit Association collects statistics for any transit service in Ontario or across Canada, I guess, with receiving gas tax funds specifically for Ontario. So they collect that information and have a comparison. What Lisa was saying is that you're never getting an apples-to-apples comparison. Everybody's running a different style of system, and a lot of those times, as nice as it is to see those numbers line up, they really don't mean the same thing when you look at how they're modeled out. They are available. It's out there if you want to talk to, I don't know if anybody McCue is here in the room, but Canadian Urban Transit has that information. Like I said, even they send me a big thick book with it all in it every year. When you look through it and flip through it, you can tell just by glancing at it, it's not apples to apples. Especially when you get to the rural stuff, because things change so much. It's so different from one community to the other. Not like the big cities where you just plug in a transit model out there. So that's the best answer I got for it.
Well, and if I understand correctly, even just before we began the session today, Brad mentioned that it varies how reporting happens too. And so like a change just happened internally for him. So his numbers for this year are going to be different than they were last year because of a different way of reporting. So internally.
Yeah, the numbers are only good as the information they provide. So as a quick example, one of the simplest questions they ask is what's the population of your service area? And it doesn't take long to flip through the book to see that some people are taking specifically the service area that they're operating in, or just this neighborhood or just this small town they operate in. Others are reporting the population of the entire municipality, whether the bus goes there or not. So the information is only as good as what's put in there, and the standard for it is all over the place. So it's there, but like I said, it doesn't take long to realize that it's not as standardized as we'd like to think it is or hope it is.
All right, yeah. So I'm here all day if you have any other questions, certainly. And as I said, you could contact myself. I'm Lisa, or Lorna, our executive director, or through Norm and the rest of the team at ROI. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And we do have, just going back to the staying connected question, we will be providing further information as these documents are finished, and you know, we'll be providing information to you as registrants. You know, we have your emails, and if you don't mind us getting in touch with you, we'll tell you when the documents are ready and where you can download them, whether that's on the Ontario Healthy Communities Coalition site or somewhere else.